All right, welcome everybody. I'm going to go ahead and get the meeting started this evening. Thank you so much for joining the Urbana Sustainability Advisory Commission meeting. I'm going to go through our agenda this evening with you guys, and before I can begin, there is a statement that I need to read related to COVID-19. So due to the governor and mayoral emergency orders, the City Council chambers will not be open to the public during this meeting. Commission members will be meeting remotely using Zoom webinar and will state who is physically present in the chambers. Anyone can watch the meeting on streaming services, UPTV, or attend virtually via Zoom. I believe that there's also a phone number for folks to call in as well. I, Stacy Gloss, am attending this meeting in City Council chambers, and Scott Tess is as well. Thank you everybody for joining us this evening. We'll go ahead and get things kicked off. Will Scott please call the roll?
Tomas Delgado.
Here.
Madeline Garbaz.
Here.
Stacy Gloss.
Here.
Megan McGinty. Andrew Stump.
Here.
Morgan White.
Here.
Grace Wilkin.
Here.
We have a quorum.
And I think Megan McGinty might have joined us. I saw a hand go up in the participant window.
Sorry. I'm sorry. I am here. Sorry. I just, for some reason, I wasn't part of the meeting there for a second, but I am here.
Great.
Thank you.
Welcome. Thank you. Yeah, in everybody's packets, you should have received the minutes to the previous meeting from June. Is there a motion to approve the minutes from the previous meeting? Wait, actually, Scott, did that go out?
I think so.
Yeah, I move to approve the minutes.
Okay.
Morgan.
Thank you, Morgan. Is there a second?
I would second the minutes from Grace.
Okay, sounds like Grace has seconded.
Stacy's lost her audio connection. Just give her 1 second. Okay, Stacy, I think we hear you again. Nope, maybe not.
I heard her. But now she's locked again.
Whoa.
UPTV is attempting to resolve. There they are.
You're also patient.
Okay.
Yeah, you're good.
Okay. If it freezes again, what I'll go ahead and do is pass the chair preemptively to Andy Stumpf in order to continue with the meeting while I set up a second computer that may or may not have a better stable connection to the call. I believe that we were at the point in the agenda where I was going to ask for, is there any discussion or changes to the minutes from the June meeting? Okay, not hearing anyone. All in favor of passing the minutes from the June meeting?
We have to do roll call.
Take a roll call. Scott, please call the roll.
Tomas Delgado,
Yes.
Madeline Garbaz,
Yes.
Stacy Bloss,
Yes.
Megan McGinty,
Yes.
Andrew Stump,
Yes.
Morgan White,
Yes.
Grace Wilkin.
Yes.
Okay, we record all yeses and that will pass. Let's see. Okay, for folks who have the agenda in front of them this evening, are there any additions or proposed changes to the agenda this evening? Okay, then we will move on to public input. Are there any members of the public on the call this evening that wish to address the commission? I also don't know how I could tell if someone's raising their hand. Scott, are you able to tell that?
I don't see hands raised, but I think UPTV is monitoring that.
Okay, excellent. Then we
Yeah,
will
I am.
move.
Sorry, I am monitoring that. We do have a Jessica. Jessica, is there anything that you want to say? Okay. She didn't have her hand raised, but I just wanted to double check since we only had one member of the public.
Okay, thank you for checking. We'll move on to presentations. We will start with the staff report. Scott, can you share the staff report with us?
Gladly. First, an update on closed landfill management. Staff has accepted a bid to do some maintenance on a force main at our closed landfill. Our leachate treatment facility is not able to pump leachate to the sanitary district at present. So we're doing some maintenance to clear that line. That work is going to start this week or next week and should only take a few days, and hopefully have our leachate treatment facility back online. We've also purchased a replacement pump for a separate leachate pump on the Champaign-Urbana solid waste disposal system portion of the landfill. And we're just waiting for electrician staff time to install that pump. Also, until such time, we're not able to pump leachate from that side of the landfill either. The Landscape Recycling Center has gone through a lot of upgrades this year, all things that were planned but expedited because of the coronavirus. We've added internet, computer, printer, credit card terminal, and social media accounts to the booth at the Landscape Recycling Center. We got all that up and running, and then the delivery truck, which was scheduled for replacement this fiscal year, is now out of service. And so we're scrambling to fill the gap while we place an order for a new delivery truck. Unfortunately, it's not a sort of off the shelf delivery truck. It'll have to be built, and so it'll take a few months. But we're working to reestablish delivery service out at the Landscape Recycling Center. We'll also be updating pricing on some, but not all, the products out at the Landscape Recycling Center. To a substantial degree, that's really resetting those prices to the consumer price index and inflation. We have conducted a municipal electric aggregation bid with a broker and a number of other cities, as we have typically done in the past. We were able to secure a small savings as compared to what will be the Ameren price to compare the regulated utility price. It's a small savings while still providing 100% renewable energy credits, green power, for the participants in the municipal electric aggregation program. And the details of that are in the staff report. It's a substantial decrease from the pricing now. It's just the whole market is quite down. So there's going to be savings from the previous year that will be substantial, but the savings as compared to Ameren's price to compare starting next year when this contract begins, January 1, are going to be small, but we're still purchasing 100% green power. Solar Urbana-Champaign is continuing to do digital solar power hours, and we've got 2 contracts signed totaling 20 kilowatts of capacity. And the next Sustainability Advisory Commission meeting would be August 4th at 7 p.m. in council chambers or by Zoom, depending on the circumstances.
Great, thank you very much for the report. Do any members of the commission have any questions? Okay. I will also open it up to the public to see if there are any questions from the public about the staff report. All right, so I think what we'll go ahead and do next is move on to our next agenda item this evening. We have some guests for a presentation tonight. This evening we'll be learning about the Clean Energy Jobs Act, and that will be presented by Scott Allen, who is with the Illinois Citizens Utility Board, and also by Amanda Pinkow, who is with the Prairie Rivers Network. So thank you both, Scott and Amanda, for joining us this evening. Please let me know if either of you have a presentation set of slides that you would like to go ahead and share, or if you just want to present by audio only. Either way is fine this evening. So welcome and thank you, and we are looking forward to learning about the Clean Energy Jobs Act.
Thank you. Yes, we do have slides, and
We can make you a presenter.
Yeah,
Hey, you
Scott,
said-
if you want to share, and I could just tell you next slide.
sure.
And apologies that I'm not on video. For some reason, my camera is not working right now. And my go-to would be to restart my computer, and can't do that in the middle of a presentation. So we'll go with this. Okay. So yeah, thank you so much for having us. I can't speak for Scott, but I really enjoy opportunities like this. I think the more people that we can talk to, the more input we can get, the more we can strengthen Illinois' energy future. So thank you so much for having us. I do want to start with a little bit of background on just both Scott and I and our orgs, and then how we work together along with other organizations towards Illinois' clean energy future. So I'm Amanda Pinkow. I'm an energy campaign coordinator with Prairie Rivers Network. We're here in Champaign-Urbana. We're a statewide org, so many of you are likely familiar with us. We're also a membership organization, and our mission is to protect water, heal land, and inspire change. And I'm joined by my colleague, Scott Allen of Citizens Utility Board. He's an environmental outreach coordinator. And CUB, Citizens Utility Board, also known as CUB, is a consumer advocacy group that fights utility rate hikes, promotes clean energy, and advocates for consumer protections in Illinois. Next slide, Scott. So Prairie Rivers and CUB work together often as part of the Illinois Clean Jobs Coalition. And this is a coalition made up of Illinois businesses and organizations representing the state's environmental, business, and faith communities and more. Coalition members are working together to protect public health, advocate for consumers, better the environment, and create tens of thousands of clean energy jobs. So as you can see from some of these pictures here, we do this in a variety of ways. We develop and advocate clean energy policy. We host community educational events, press conferences, expert panels on energy, climate, lobby days, work with our legislators. So I picked some of the pictures from Central Illinois here. You'll probably recognize one of your very own mass transit, Urbana mass transit buses. We had a press conference in the bus barn in Urbana it would have been March of 2019 to announce the introduction of the Clean Energy Jobs Act. We were joined by Senator Bennett and Representative Ammons, along with community leaders and community members. I've got a couple of pictures there on the bottom from Lobby Day, and the picture in the upper right is an event that Scott and I did in Charleston, Mattoon area, where we had over 60 people come out and have really a conversation and discussion on what Illinois' energy future looks like. Next slide, Scott. So one of the Clean Jobs Coalition's claim to fame is our role in helping pass the Future Energy Jobs Act. And you'll hear me refer to this as FEJA, and then we refer to the Clean Energy Jobs Act as CEJA. So FEJA was passed by the Illinois legislature in 2016 with bipartisan support. Next slide. FEJA created programs and incentives for renewable energy, energy efficiency, and workforce development, all in an attempt to help Illinois meet its goal to get to 25% renewable energy by 2025. This is a goal the state had for several years, but didn't have a plan or incentives to get there. So FEJA was how we did that. And thanks to FEJA, Illinois has now become a leader in clean energy and clean energy jobs. We see, we're just now seeing the Solar for All and community solar projects kick off, like this project on Urbana's landfill. So we've seen great success. Communities, consumers are benefiting from this. Unfortunately, Illinois still ranks pretty high in emissions from power plants, emissions from our transportation sector. We're third in the nation in emissions from our homes. You know, and there's more that we need to do to address climate change, address inequity, things that, you know, FEJA certainly didn't tackle. So the coalition knew that we needed to do more. So next slide, please, Scott. And we recognize there was a lot of different paths, a lot of different policy solutions that could be used to meet some of these lingering and growing problems. So what we did was in the spring of 2018, we launched what we called a Listen, Lead, Share campaign to get input from communities on what Illinois' energy future would look like and how we would get there. So in total, the coalition has held over 100 events all across the state. We asked very specific questions at these events. That the picture I shared from Charleston, Mattoon was one of these events. We brought that answers to those questions and that community input back to policy experts with the coalition to help inform what ultimately became the Clean Energy Jobs Act. The next slide. So when we talk about CEJA, we often talk about our 4 policy pillars. It's kind of a good way to wrap your mind around what is now like a 700-page bill. So the first pillar, and this pillar really is at the center of everything that we put forth, and it's intertwined in the other 3 pillars, is our jobs and economic justice pillar. So it recognizes the fact that growing these new clean energy jobs and this new clean energy economy is not simply a solution for climate change, but it's also a vehicle and an opportunity to expand equitable access to quality jobs and economic opportunities for economically disadvantaged and environmental justice communities, to communities of color, and to communities and workers that will be impacted by a decline in coal or our changing energy economy. The second pillar of CEJA is establishment of pollution caps that would remove greenhouse gas emissions from the power sector by 2030. The third pillar sets Illinois on a path to 100% renewable energy by 2050. It expands equitable access to clean energy and energy efficiency projects and careers across the state. And then the fourth and final pillar is increasing electric vehicles. So CEJA aims to remove the equivalent of 1 million gasoline and diesel powered vehicles from the road by incentivizing electric vehicles, mass transit, and other alternatives. So again, these four pillars are like just a really great way to have an overview of the bill. And Scott and I are going to spend some time talking about each one of these, but it'll even just be an overview of each of the pillars. So I'll talk about the first two in a little bit more detail and then hand it over to Scott, who will talk about the second two. So next slide. So this jobs and economic justice pillar. So some of the highlights of this pillar are that CEJA would create what's known as a Clean Jobs Workforce Hub program. And this would be a network of frontline organizations across the state that would provide a training pipeline for not only solar jobs, so the Future Energy Jobs Act, we just had training for solar. CEJA would increase this to include solar, wind, energy efficiency, electric vehicles, and other new industries in these sectors. These programs would be geographically distributed across the state, and they would have priority placement for individuals from some of those communities I mentioned: economically disadvantaged communities, environmental justice communities, communities of color, displaced fossil fuel workers. And it's interesting to note, so of the central Illinois locations, so some of them are written into the bill, and some of the locations include Danville, Champaign, and Decatur. So East Central Illinois really fares well for placement of these workforce hubs. Along with those hubs will be co-located contractor incubator programs to support the development and growth of disadvantaged businesses and contractors, providing these businesses with the tools and resources that they need to be competitive. CEJA would create preferences for clean energy companies that prioritize equity by doing things like hiring a diverse workforce, implementing community benefits agreements, and more. And then finally, CEJA would expand those programs that were created by CEJA, namely Community Solar and Solar for All. Both of those programs, you know, they were new with CEJA. They had some problems, so CEJA would expand them, but also improve upon them. Next slide. So the second pillar is the decarbonization of Illinois' power sector by 2030 to tackle climate change and pollution. So CEJA directs the Illinois EPA, the Illinois Environmental Protection Agency, and the Pollution Control Board to establish rules that regulate and decrease greenhouse gas pollution, as well as other pollutants, co-pollutants we call them, like sulfur dioxide, nitrogen oxide, and particulate matter. Those are the types of pollutants that are making our Illinois neighbors that live in these coal plant communities sick with asthma and other increased rates of heart disease and things. So this reduction will be done on an annual basis. So caps will be established annually on each plant, and they will decline on independent schedules until they reach zero emissions allowed by 2030. And CEJA ensures that power plants located in densely populated and environmental justice communities are prioritized for more rapid closure. And it actually establishes a robust stakeholder process, including public comment and public hearings across the state to ensure that accelerated closure of the most polluting plants actually happens. And then finally, CEJA, I skipped over CEJA would also give Illinois control over the Northern Illinois capacity market, which is known as the PJM capacity market. And by doing that, it would lower rates for consumers, and it would prevent the Trump administration, basically federal regulators are trying to make it easier for coal to compete in these markets. And CEJA would have a fix to ensure that renewable energy can continue to compete in that market. And then the last thing that I have for you here is one thing that Prairie Rivers Network works a lot on, and that's ensuring a just transition by providing support for communities and workers that are impacted by closures of fossil fuel plants. So that picture in the upper left-hand corner there is actually the Duck Creek coal plant near Canton, Illinois, and at several communities in that part of the state along the Illinois River. And then another one in Montgomery County lost a coal plant last fall. And with that, they lost a significant contributor to their tax base to fund schools, police departments, fire departments, things like that. 60 plus folks in each of those communities lost their good paying jobs. So CEJA has particular programs to help those communities and those workers transition to new jobs, new economies. And I think you're up, Scott.
Great. Thank you, Amanda. And thank you for handling that introduction more gracefully than I could. Thank you all for having us here too. As a kind of a brand new resident of Urbana now, just like to say I appreciate the work that you all are doing with this commission too. So the plan for CEJA is to get to 100% renewable energy by 2050. It's a lofty goal, but I think everybody knows we're running out of time. And like Amanda said, we're kind of stepping up 25% by 2025 and 45% by 2030. So along with that comes private investment to build that solar. It requires we need, you see there, we need 4 times the solar that FEJA brought us. And I'll talk a little bit here about how we've kind of fallen off that path a little bit. But just as important to installing renewable energy is improving energy efficiency. That's kind of the first step needed for people to benefit from renewables. CEJA recognizes that and really strengthens the renewable or the energy efficiency programs that were created under FEJA and that are implemented by the investor-owned utilities, Ameren and ComEd. And it removes an exemption for the large electricity users who in the past have found a way to carve themselves out of those energy efficiency requirements. And something that's important for the low-income homes, one thing that installers see a lot is when they're trying to retrofit a home for energy efficiency, they run into a problem, say asbestos or a roof's not fit for solar or whatever. Oftentimes those fixes are fairly inexpensive, but it's more than that homeowner can overcome. So there's some money set aside to make those repairs so that that work isn't completely stalled out and those energy efficiency retrofits can be completed. So there's an urgency to all of this. Like Amanda said, that when FEJA came along, it tried to fix the renewable portfolio standard, add some incentives and some policies to prompt the state or to prompt solar and wind energy building in the state. It established the renewable energy credits. But when FEJA rolled out, these programs were fairly complicated and there were some bumps in the road. So we're still not on track to hit that goal of 25% by 2025. And we've run into what has been termed as the solar cliff, meaning that these programs that were started in FEJA, they had certain budgets to fund these renewable energy credits, to fund these renewable energy projects. And with the bumps along the road, that cost time and money. And it was always part of the plan that the legislature would need to pass more legislation to keep that funding going so these projects could go on. Well, people could see that we were approaching that solar cliff, and it wasn't clear in our last legislative session if any action was going to be taken to fill those gaps. So that did hurt confidence in Illinois contractors, installers, and developers. And so they got a little shaky, but job growth still continued despite that. But we didn't get that legislation. There was no way to fill that gap. So, you know, like you see here that the community solar program is nearly out of money. And those big the utility scale projects, also the community solar projects, that's where most of the jobs are. And since it's not, the future of those programs isn't clear until the legislature acts, that's caused a lot of the, especially smaller installers to, you know, to have to lay off staff or fold up altogether. So the good news is that, as Scott mentioned, the Solarize, Champaign-Urbana, the money for rooftop solar is still there. That's not in danger. And Solar for All, the way that low-income people can access rooftop solar and community solar, that funding comes from a different source. So it's not affected yet. Eventually it would be if we don't act at all. But CEJA does offer one of the other reasons that the industry was hit so hard was obviously because of COVID. Installers couldn't go out and work in person for, you know, even now, I suppose it's not all that safe. So CEJA is kind of a way to provide that economic recovery, try to get that industry kickstarted again, but it's really difficult to make up for the time that we've lost and the jobs that have already gone away. And so talk really quickly about the transportation sector. And I know from Mr. Test, this is something that he's had an interest in early on, so I hope we got some better news. Transportation now has overtaken energy generation as the leading source of pollution in Illinois. So it just seemed like a natural fit to put this in the Clean Energy Jobs Act, that if we're going to deal with the energy sector, we've got to line up what's next, you know, what the second biggest polluter is. So this program, all of the provisions in CEJA look to build an electric vehicle infrastructure, rebate incentive program, vehicle access for all, so that low-income communities and you know, people who otherwise wouldn't be able to own an electric vehicle can also take part in these benefits. And the beneficial electrification plan, which I'll talk a little bit about, that stuff's pretty cool. So like I said, car ownership's not an option for everybody. People choose not to drive, or they can't drive for whatever reason. We know that in the neglected and disadvantaged communities that this is an even wider gap. So CEJA creates the EV Access for All program that is administered by the Department of Commerce and Economic Opportunity, or DCEO. It includes a car sharing program, the carbon-free last mile. So that's, you know, it could be easy. It's a little bit easier to get if you're making a 7-mile commute to take a train or to take a bus or something that could potentially one day be electric, but it's that last mile for getting home rather than taking a cab or calling a car. It's trying to fill those gaps with zero emissions vehicles, bikes and scooters, and EV car shares, electric shuttles. Especially important in the more dense communities in the state. These community and energy climate plans, any community that chooses to take part in these to get funding from DCEO has to support this EV Access for All program. So a community could decide that we would like to develop a climate plan, an energy and climate plan, and DCEO would release the funds for that. But the city would have to agree to try to implement some of these car sharing programs, last mile programs. There is a rebate for individuals. It's aimed at low income. This is a little bit of a sticky point. I think we realized that there was some debate about whether or not to try to offer a rebate program for low income people, especially something that is means tested. But we did get a lot of feedback that people were interested in trying to own their own electric vehicle. So we came up with a $4,000 rebate for a new car that costs up to $45,000, and the same $4,000 rebate for a used car that costs up to $35,000. So, you know, it's that's not something that's going to work for everybody, but couple that with any other federal rebates that we might get, again, one of these days, or state rebates, it does help somebody get a little bit closer to car or EV ownership. The beneficial electrification is, I've always kind of seen it as a way, like brainstorming how we can maximize the potential of the grid, how we can shift our usage or bring clean energy online and in a way that doesn't destabilize the grid. So this means storing and deploying massive amounts of electricity. When solar comes online, we get this shape where we're producing solar at a time when individuals aren't using as much solar. They're at work or they're at school. So there's the potential, if you have no storage, that excess generation just is kind of wasted, and that's obviously that's not ideal. So the idea is to get people to shift their demand, to find a way either through batteries or another way to save this energy and use it at night when solar is not producing, or incentivize that by creating programs, off-peak charging and off-peak usage, incentivize people to switch the way they use electricity. Those are what are referred to as non-wire alternatives. It's basically trying to find a way to maximize the use of renewable generation without having to immediately sink a lot of cost into upgrading the grid to handle that. I listed down here turning electric vehicles into battery storage, that there's an idea that part of this EV Access for All program also proposes to replace school buses with electric buses. And if those aren't in use in the summertime, they can be parked, and that energy can be stored, fed back through the charger, and be stored in the batteries of those buses, and then used again to dispatch that energy maybe at nighttime. So it's just finding ways to use the grid so that we're not destabilizing it, and we can take advantage of all the energy we're generating. So overcoming some of the barriers that exist, especially in this part of the state and even further south, where it's a little more rural and we don't have as much access to EV charging. This program, CEJA, offers benefits and incentives to municipalities, to transit authorities, even commercial businesses, to build that infrastructure, and encourages them rebates through to get the level 3 charging, so that people will build this infrastructure and the public can use it. And that's especially true for trying to find a way to not leave those disadvantaged communities behind. Oftentimes they're skipped over when it comes to technology. So there's a particular focus to get that infrastructure built in those communities. Some of the other things are charger rebates for individuals. If you sign up to participate in a beneficial charging plan, meaning that you'll charge your car in off-peak hours, then you can get a rebate for a charger. But you know, for down in this part of the state, and even more rural parts of the states, building that infrastructure on the highway corridors so that somebody can get, you know, 300 miles away and have somewhere to plug in. That's the kind of feedback that we got. Amanda and I heard a lot from people down here is that it's not possible for us to ever think of owning an EV because I couldn't get from Carbondale to Springfield. Where am I going to charge? So these are some of the things that we tried to include in the bill to kind of fill those gaps. So this is the question I think that comes up from everybody, but especially lawmakers, is how do you pay for all of this? Amanda talked about taking over the Northern Illinois capacity market. That's how most of CEJA is paid for. As it stands now, we overpurchase, well, I should say PJM, so like ComEd, in that territory, they overpurchase capacity by at least 15%, and that's hundreds of millions of dollars being spent that doesn't need to. So CEJA proposes to, instead of having a grid-wide auction for that the Illinois Power Agency can just as easily figure out what are the needs for Northern Illinois for their capacity and then purchase that. So by doing that, you save a lot of money, and instead of that money going to the prioritized fossil fuel generators, we should build up our own renewable energy grid here. The rest of those programs, the ones mostly that Amanda talked about with the jobs and the just transition, people overwhelmingly said that they wanted polluters to pay for that. So she discussed the decreasing emissions fees and an excise fee for any coal that is mined in the state. That money is then reinvested in those communities where coal plants are shutting down, coal mines are shutting down. So this isn't paid for by taxpayers. It's all about reprioritizing where ratepayer money is already spent. And plus the cost of human lives, I don't know that anybody is going to make a calculation of that. But I think for a lot of people, that's probably the most important part of this, is trying to do what we can, what we have a responsibility to mitigate climate change. So that's all we have. We'd be glad to take any questions if there are any. Yes. There we go.
Can I go
Was that-
ahead and?
Yes,
Can I
go ahead, Morgan.
Okay. My question, I was just thinking on the electric vehicles, so it's one piece. Does it include, are you looking at policy? I actually don't know the process that I'm thinking of, but when the city of Urbana and when our local area, when a developer wants to build a new high rise, which we have, the U of I has all these students and they want to live in these tall apartment complexes because they're the newest one. They usually want to go to the newest one. That's my guess. But those apartment buildings don't typically have electric vehicle charging infrastructure. So there's just something in the Clean Energy Jobs Act that sort of relates back to that aspect about new developments and making sure that charging infrastructure is incorporated?
Yeah, there's something. So one of the things in the ongoing discussions of how we can continue to improve the bill and what we can continue to add to it before it gets time for veto session, one of the discussions that we've been having are around stretch codes. So setting stretch codes that municipalities would buy into. So then that could be made part of the building codes. I know that there's been a lot of discussion of that in Chicago to do exactly what you're talking about. And I think that that's probably the way to approach it, and that's probably the way that we'll attempt to approach it in CEJA, other than just offering incentives to, you know, if it's a commercial rental business, offering incentives to install those charging stations.
Okay. I didn't have other questions. I think it's good. It's good.
Well, if anything else comes up, we'd be glad to track down all of the answers that we can and get them to the commission. Like I said, we really appreciate the opportunity to come talk to you guys, especially me as now a resident of Urbana. It makes me feel good that you guys are there.
Scott,
Yeah, thank you.
Can you talk about, just briefly summarize, you know, the legislative calendar as it relates to the Clean Energy Jobs Act?
Yeah, we had hoped that there would be a vote on, because there are several pieces of energy legislation in addition to CEJA. Both of the utilities have energy proposals out there. Vistra, who owns most of the coal plants, has a energy plan out there. So we were hoping to get a vote on this last year. It didn't come up, and then we thought maybe the spring session, there was some talk about that, and everything kind of fell apart with COVID. So now our push is, with a lot of this stuff, especially with the capacity market reform and the solar cliff, we've already gone over the solar cliff. And with the capacity market reform, although that doesn't affect us down here in Ameren territory, the way that those auctions run for every 3 years, we've passed the point of no return unless action is taken. I think we've already missed one auction. So people in ComEd territory are going to see a utility rate increase. It's just a matter of how much. So the goal is to, in the veto session at the end of October, beginning of November, hope to get some energy legislation passed. You know, and CEJA obviously is, the governor has signaled that that's what he would like to see, something that focuses on equity and environmental justice. So right now, CEJA is the only thing that offers any of that. So we're hoping the veto session.
Thank you. Are there other questions?
Yeah, I have a couple of comments, Stacy.
Go right ahead.
Yeah, I think the idea of electrification is really good. It's a really good program, but I think we need to think about actually how wind and solar can be used within a grid that has other resources in it. So I'll say something like geothermal. Geothermal can add to the efficiency and the overall emissions reduction, because solar and wind aren't 24/7, but geothermal can fill in that gap. Also, there's technologies such as like hydrogen production and compressed air, where you can actually use excess electricity when you're overproducing and actually store that energy in the ground and then pull it out or store it in batteries or whatever, and then reuse it when you need it later. So that's one thing. And then urban areas, also reusing waste heat from buildings, actually connecting communities, connecting buildings together to efficiently use heat that's being generated from one source. So if you have a bunch of buildings running off one energy plant, if you connect them together with technology, you can actually make that more efficient. So I think some of those other aspects of building the grid out to be more efficient would also be a priority. for a bill. So.
Yeah, you're 100% right. And that's kind of when, because people, I mean, that's one of the things, the questions people have is that the battery storage technology isn't there. And no, it's not there yet. But in addition to battery storage technology, all of those other things, passive buildings, that technology is going to continue to develop, and all of that will be a key part, critical to get us to 100% renewable. Can't do it with wind and solar alone, for sure.
Mm-hmm. And there's a lot of federal programs now that are trying to get at those other technologies. Mm-hmm. So if you look down in the future, 5-10 years, I think those will become part of the grid. But if those are in that bill now, then you can actually integrate those as they come online, I guess.
Yeah, there are incentives for geothermal. Like Amanda said, it's hard to kind of pick out what to talk about, but the incentives, rebates for geothermal, things like that, and even in the stretch code conversation, all that comes up. But yeah, you're 100% right.
And Illinois is actually well suited for geothermal just because of the climate and the geology, basically. So other places in the U.S. don't have those conditions. So places like New York State, they've already jumped on that bandwagon for geothermal. So they've really tried to maximize that in exchange for natural gas and other types of energy. So, okay, thanks.
Thank you.
I have a question. That was all for that. I was wondering about job training. You'd mentioned some sites in Danville, Decatur, and Champaign, and I didn't see it on the website that was listed. I was wondering if there's somewhere else to find that information.
Yeah, it's actually in the bill, and I could send you the page numbers. And I have it pulled up here too, if you guys just want me to read them off. The sites include one on the south side of Chicago, the southwest side of Chicago, Waukegan, Rockford, Aurora, Joliet, Peoria, Champaign, Danville, Decatur, Carbondale, East St. Louis, and Alton. And then there are 3 locations that are currently unnamed. One of them will be in the Chicago region. One of them will be in north central Illinois, and then one will be in southern Illinois. So kind of the 3 remaining will be divided kind of regionally across the state.
Okay, thank you. And is it known when those will be happening or posted or anything?
So, this is the bill still has to pass. And, I think this piece of the bill is one of the things we are most excited about, most proud of, with the equity provisions that go along with the workforce hubs. I think it's also a part of the bill that will stand some opposition from opponents. So, so this is, these aren't happening yet. We need community voices saying, because there's other workforce type, state workforce things that there's fewer of them. The governor has like a new, I know nothing about it, but like Illinois Works program. And my understanding is there's just a few of these workforce hubs. So we like how ours are more geographically spread out, but it's going to take some advocacy and some power, some people power to make sure that this provision especially makes it into the final piece of legislation. But I'd be happy to get Scott the bill, the language from the bill from last July is on the Clean Jobs Coalition website. We are rolling out a new version of the bill in coming weeks that we're calling CJA 3.0. It's kind of the 3rd version of the bill. It's strengthened and has some new equity pieces. But I could go ahead and send the one that's publicly available with the sections that deal with those workforce hubs, their locations, as well as the contractor incubator hubs that are paired with them.
Thank you. Yeah, thanks for clarifying. That does sound really exciting and well distributed. I think that's yeah, that would be a great thing to be able to pass and have in the rest of the state.
Yeah, I'm in Central Illinois now. I'm in Monticello, but I lived in the far southern part of the state for about 13 years. So I was real excited to see a few locations down there with the option to add another one as well.
Hi, Scott and Amanda. Thank you for the presentation. My name is Tomas. And I just had one question regarding what your ideas following the passage of, or if it passes. Do you see it benefiting local park districts or forest preserve districts in deferred maintenance or possible expansion of those districts?
Yep. Is that Amanda? Do you want me to answer that, or?
I mean, unfortunately, so, at Prairie Rivers Network, we work on agricultural and, natural area campaigns as well. And we definitely see those playing a very critical role in, both climate mitigation as well as adapting to climate change, with increased flood capacity and natural areas. And so unfortunately, the Clean Energy Jobs Act does not have a lot of those natural climate solution type provisions. We did work with Open Lands as an Illinois nonprofit here recently to add some language into CEJA so part of CEJA is empowering communities to create climate action plans. I'm not exactly sure what the word is, but part of that language was encouraging them to look at natural climate solutions and natural lands as part of those climate plans. So I do think it was a bit of a win that we were able to work with Open Lands, and Prairie Rivers was able to advocate to get some of that in there. But, a lot of the existing legislation that CEJA is tacking on to or modifying our, energy and transportation pieces of legislation. So we've kind of been told that it needs to kind of stick in that realm, and getting more into the natural areas type stuff is yet to come. I think that's something that especially downstate orgs have been really pressing the coalition to think about what's next after CEJA. I think there's going to be another transportation bill, but we certainly hope there'll also be like a natural climate solutions bill where we're looking at agriculture and natural areas as solutions for mitigation adaptation, as well as just, overall better communities and resiliency and everything.
Yeah, thank you.
Members of the public do to get involved with these campaigns, and are there volunteer opportunities for members of the public to do some of this advocacy work, either with your organizations or through the Clean Jobs Coalition?
Definitely, and for downstate, we have so the Clean Energy or the Clean Jobs Illinois website. People can sign up there to take certain actions, but it's harder to, if anybody's interested in working on the downstate parts of it, they could feel free to reach out to either me or Amanda. And CUB, we have a lot of volunteers in Chicago who work on this. We have volunteers that host clean energy town halls around this. Not so many, we have one volunteer in Carbondale, but there are ways, we will go out of our way to help people get plugged into this. So that's why I think maybe the easiest way is they could contact me or Amanda, or we'll eventually get, somebody will eventually alert that, hey, there's somebody in downstate Illinois that's interested in this if they plug in through the Illinois Clean Jobs, the Clean Jobs Illinois website. And then,
that question, would have been easier to answer in a pre-COVID world. You know, we were typically having 2 lobby days a year, and you know, we were inviting members of the public to hop on a bus with us from Champaign-Urbana. We were doing, you know, in-person events to get people educated and excited about the bill. But so, you know, now that's a little bit different. And the coalition is kind of, you know, re-examining what that grassroots advocacy looks like now. But certainly, you know, dropping notes to area legislators, both Senator Bennett and Carol Ammons have been co-sponsors of the bill since. So I'm thinking from a Champaign-Urbana perspective, they've been co-sponsors since the beginning. That press conference we had in the bus barn, Carol Ammons had already come on as one of the chief co-sponsors in the House. And at the press conference, Senator Bennett announced that he would be co-sponsoring the bill. But they are actually both identified as important leaders, especially downstate in this sort of stuff. So the more they can hear from constituents about support for climate action, you know, clean energy, jobs and economic opportunities, I think the better, the more they know that they're doing the right thing by stepping out and advocating for it. So yeah, I don't, Prairie Rivers doesn't have any action alerts right now to kind of help folks get those messages to them, but I would anticipate into the coming months that we will. And yeah, I'd be more than happy to talk with any potential volunteer that wanted to get plugged in really at any level. We've had volunteers in the past gather petitions and things like that. So yeah, we'd love to get hooked up with people.
Amanda, I just have a clarification question for that. You had mentioned that it's still helpful for folks like Carol Ammons and Scott Bennett to receive kind of encouragement and support. Is that what you're saying on supporting CEJA? I guess what I'm wondering is that, you know, occasionally, maybe several of us on this call, I'm not really sure, get, you know, reminders to support CEJA, whether that's through a petition or a letter to your legislature. Is it actually helpful as sponsors, you know, for them to still hear from members of the community on that?
I definitely think so.
Okay, great.
You know, you know, there's not a lot of downstate legislators that are out in front and stuff like that. So, you know, I think when they put themselves out in front on stuff like that, they're a bit vulnerable. And so, you know, knowing that that's what their constituents want them to do, I think it's definitely a good thing.
Thank you.
And also, you know, then so I mentioned Prairie Rivers Network in particular works with coal communities to advocate for the parts of the bill that will support coal communities. You know, Vermilion County still has a power plant standing. You know, it's not running anymore. Vermilion County has a proposed coal mine. So that's all in Scott Bennett's district. There's abandoned mine lands in Vermilion County that still need to be reclaimed. So Scott actually stepped out kind of in a leadership position when we were introducing those coal community and coal worker transition pieces of the bill. He kind of stepped out as a vocal voice on that, kind of a leader. And that was really, really helpful to have him, you know, do that. And I think part of that is because he knew his constituents would support him taking a vocal stance on this bill. Should include support for communities like, you know, Vermilion County that have seen this economic decline because of dirty fossil fuels, you know, moving out. So anyway, so that's just an example of where I think the more he knows this is what my people want, the easier it is for him to be a leader and speak out.
Great, thank you. Are there any other final questions for our presenters this evening? All right, well, thank you both to Amanda Pankow and Scott Allen for joining us this evening on the Clean Energy Jobs Act. It's been most informative, so thank you. We will be moving, and before you guys hang up, let me just check one more time. Does any member of the public wish to make a comment or ask any questions about the presentation that was just made? Jessica, I have allowed you to talk. Go ahead.
Hi, I'm just saying hi because I've been feeling a little bit like a lurker and I couldn't unmute earlier. Very interesting discussion, and happy to hear from Prairie Rivers Network and hear what you guys are all about and what you're doing. So just kind of experiencing it and just seeing what you're all about.
Yeah, thank you,
Great
Jessica.
job.
Appreciate it.
I'm
Thank
glad
you.
I live in a community where this kind of stuff matters, is really the long and short of it. Lots of work to be done, though. Carrie, that's all.
Excellent. Thank you
I
very
don't
much.
even know if you can see me. Can you see me? No.
No.
Okay. Yeah. All right. Well, bye.
All right. So the next item on our agenda this evening is, if I need to actually go back to my agenda, is about the resolution that was provided in your packet ahead of the meeting. This would be the resolution establishing social equity and justice and Urbana sustainability.
I can't hear her. I don't know if it's me.
Can anybody hear her?
Okay.
No, give us a minute.
When my Zoom calls started not working today, it was usually everyone else could still hear everyone. It was just me that couldn't hear.
How about now? Is it back?
Yeah.
Great. I think we're having some technical difficulties here at the city building. So my question is do we need to read the full resolution out loud in order to put it before the commission? No. Okay. All righty. All right.
Someone does have to make a motion.
Sorry, can you say that again?
Someone would need to make a motion, but you don't have to read the entire resolution.
Okay, great. Thank you. All right, so everybody has had an opportunity to review the resolution establishing social equity and justice in Urbana's sustainability framework. At this time, is there a motion on the table, or would somebody make a motion to approve that resolution?
I would make a motion to approve the resolution.
I'll second that.
Excellent. Thank you, Grace, and thank you, Morgan. Is there any discussion or comments around the resolution that has been provided?
I have a comment. I'm very happy that this has been put forward. I think this is a very important aspect of sustainability, and I strongly believe in this. I think also, I have a question. Are we able to, or I'm wondering, how will we communicate that the commission has made this resolution to the broader public? Will we be, tweeting about it or sharing it at the council or something to that effect? Or could we could talk about that.
No, I think that that's an excellent question. Some of the be it resolved, so the things that this resolution resolved to do, and let me try and pull that up again, involve a number of things that are specific to just us as a commission, and then also things that are specific to the community and also to the city council in particular and to the mayor's office as well. And so the things that are going to be pursuant to the commission are that, so we'll be seeking to integrate social equity into future climate action plans or what would be the comprehensive plan and any future sustainability program. So we should be considering equity in our discussions as we talk about plans and programs that we have and that we participate in. Other things that are going to be more local to the SAC will be for us to conduct a review and seek to amend the SAC bylaws to include a social equity statement. And I believe that we can do that through the SAC and that we don't need to have city council or the mayor's office involved in that. However, we will certainly be seeking approval from the mayor's office and including her in that decision. There are some questions in here then that relate to the development of the comprehensive plan. So saying that we'll be participating in that comprehensive plan, and that we want to make sure that equity is included in the climate adaptation, sustainability, and social equity. One of the next items on the agenda this evening that we'll be talking about is our path for participation in the comp plan. So that's another way that this is going to be kind of interjected into the community. And what I really would like to do is just get to bullet point number 5. We'll be requesting that the city government convenes a series of meetings for at least the chairs of commissions in order to kind of build the relationships across the commissions. Because one of the things that that has come up at SAC before, and I don't know about others in particular, but we kind of sometimes feel like the work that we do is a little bit siloed off from other commissions. And I think that that's really interesting, and it doesn't have to be, it doesn't have to specifically be that way. Like I sometimes question, like Morgan, I know that you're on the Bike Commission, for example, and Bike Commission and Sustainability Advisory Commission are things that would overlap. We recently had a presentation by the Tree Commission. There are things part of the Tree Commission that sort of overlap with sustainability. There's a lot of interconnections. And so I'd like to be building those relationships and would like to formalize that by having the mayor's office support that type of activity. And let's see, is there anything else? I think that that's where I would just go ahead and leave it. We will invite the city council, other for our community.
Did you all lose Stacy?
I did.
Yes.
Okay, hold on.
Scott, is she aware that, because I think she was continuing to talk?
Yeah, I'll let her know.
While they're working on that, I would echo and agree with you, Morgan. I think this is a really important part of sustainability, and I'm excited to see it more incorporated. And I'm wondering, when we get down the road, what kind of concrete steps or actions we can take.
Yeah, actually, the list here in the resolution that's got seven items. I really like how some of them are very, very clear. You know, we're gonna review the bylaws. That's an action, and it's nice to see like that we've identified what we can do, and then as we do those things, I'm sure we'll identify lots more. It's a problem all over the place, and there's a lot.
I think I'm back. Yes, my apologies for the kind of technical glitches this evening. I did see Marcus was raising his hand. I would like to go ahead and call on Marcus.
So I'm really impressed with the resolution, and I really like point number 5. Sorry, point number. Oh, geez. The one that says that the commission chairs would work together regularly and meet together. That would be
It's number 5.
number 5. Yes.
Yeah.
Chair, yes. So I think that's a great idea. You know, and even things like the street commission, I don't even know all the commissions, and that's pretty telling as a city employee to not know what all the commissions are. So I think that is a great idea. I am also interested and appreciate SAC's interest in participating in the comprehensive plan. And I was wondering if you had any thoughts about how you might do that, or how you might best serve that, or are you just kind of on standby for folks to come to you and say, hey, here's how we want you to participate? I know it's early on in that process.
That's the next agenda item.
All right, we'll discuss that on the next agenda item, but thank you, yes. I believe where I had dropped off previously was on how to kind of share these commitments out with the public. And one of the strategies for putting this in a resolution form, for one, at the most simple level, is that if it passes this evening, then it becomes part of the record and it becomes searchable, and it is then on the city's website. And I think that that is actually really important to show a group of people that are concerned about these issues and to put it there, and that it needs to be there. Beyond that, I'll be working with staff to bring up the different resolution points with the mayor's office, and we'll also invite the city council to have a dialogue as well on this topic. You'll note that this is a resolution that is potentially to be passed by the SAC. This is not a resolution that we're passing on and asking specifically for the city to pass this resolution. This is something that we're doing at the SAC. I would like to encourage, if this passes SAC, I would love to encourage the city council to review the resolution, adapt it, and also put out a similar statement as well. And we can also, so that there is a little bit of social media around it, we can also put this on like the sustainability Facebook page. And if we're contacted by a member of the media that has any questions, Scott and I can discuss how to handle any media. Other questions or comments? Okay. All right, so we'll go ahead and we'll call the roll for taking a vote on this item.
Tomas Delgado,
Yes.
Madeline Garbas, is Maddie still on?
I don't know.
I don't think so. Stacy Gloss,
Yes.
Megan McGinty,
Yes.
Andrew Stump,
Yes.
Morgan White,
Yes.
Grace Wilkin.
Yes.
I think we lost her again. There you are.
Hey, you're back.
Oh boy.
Hey, you're back.
All right, well, thank you everybody for passing that resolution, and it will appear as part of the record.
Stacy's frozen again, but I think we're probably ready to move on to the next agenda item, which is discussion of comprehensive plan values. So we've got Andrea Ruedi on the call. She's listening in to SAC today. She is the lead on developing the comprehensive plan for the city. We've talked about this before. The city is not making a new comprehensive land use plan, but rather a comprehensive citywide plan. And Stacy and myself and Andrea had a call and talked about the potential roles that SAC may play in the development of that plan. And the first thing we wanted to do was start with determining what the SAC members' foundational values are that they want to be kind of a basis for their participation. And so that's why Stacy found some examples of values-based surveys, and we sent that survey out to all of the members and the staff to the commission, and got some feedback to try and have a good, strong starting place. Before I switch to that, I just want to pause and give Andrea an opportunity to maybe add or modify anything I've said so far.
No, I thank you for the opportunity to sit in on your meeting this evening. And the comprehensive plan is just getting underway. And so we really appreciate this commission providing input so early on in the process. And it's very important for us to really capture the sentiment of this group and what this group really feels like the sustainability projects and mission should be going forward, so that we can incorporate that into the comprehensive plan and weave it into the other elements of the plan. So very critical time to be getting your input, and really appreciate the work that Stacy and Scott have done to this point to get everyone involved in this process, and certainly appreciate that.
Thank you, Andrea. So I'm going to switch over, share my screen, and show you the results. Just to reiterate, this was not intended to be a listing of practical or action-oriented items that SAC may want to incorporate in the comprehensive plan, but rather foundational values that everything else would be built upon. So let me switch over to that. Okay, so I have ranked the survey results from highest to lowest. The percent is the number of people out of 8 participants that chose these particular answer choices as one of their top 10 most important values that they think should be foundational for the city comprehensive plan. So it was a big list, and Stacy primarily and myself secondarily compiled these options from a couple different sources. There are a few that maybe could have been combined, like diverse perspectives and equity, but nonetheless, there's a pretty strong trend in terms of the foundational values that members and staff are supporting. Sustainability and science at the top, diversity and equity right after that, resilience as well, scoring high. Then there's sort of a lower tier, so community, economic sustainability, environmental awareness, partnership, and cultural. I did not include in this summary list those answer choices that got 0 votes. So I think, what's clear here is sort of technical, scientific sustainability orientation, as well as diversity, equity, and you might include inclusion and justice, as those 4 tend to go together. but certainly those are very important to this commission. Any comments from the commission?
I thought this was a very interesting exercise, and it's interesting to me that sustainability came out on top. You know, I see my job as sustainability for campus, but sustainability kind of covers a lot of this. So when I was picking my top 10, and I ended up clicking sustainability last, like of all the things, like, oh, well, definitely this, definitely, you know, definitely rooted in science, definitely about our community, diverse perspectives. But then it's just, there's so many pieces in here that tie back to what we're looking for. It's very, very comprehensive. So I'm kind of interested in that, like the next level down. Maybe you scroll down a little. Thank you. And just, I'm curious how these all, how do we take the goal of human development and growth and yet modify it so that we are being a healthy, you know, community-based, you know, how do we do this in a very, very fair and smart manner? And I think it's a complicated question. So it's interesting.
There are different ways to approach this. Certainly, you know, there are frameworks that will fold a lot of these into simpler or more foundational values that could have been done, but there's also some value in splitting things up into more precise notions. So, I mean, I think there certainly are some trends here, even in the 25% tier, you see diversity showing up again, fairness. That's clearly, you know, a value or a value set that is quite important to this commission. Any other comments? Anything that scored low that folks thought was nonetheless really important, wanted to bring up?
Can you scroll down to the low scores?
Yeah, I found it hard to pick 10 actually.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, 15 maybe that was maybe easier, but then again.
Yeah, I had 13 and had to go back and remove 3.
Scott and Stacy, could you maybe expound on what your idea of smart growth would be within this exercise?
You want to take that or you want me to?
Well, it's possible that, you know, Scott and I might have different answers on this, but so one of the things that I was thinking of, so I think I might have added smart growth to a list of values as one to consider. And I think for that, it sort of encompasses some of like, in some ways I wish that Dustin were here because he could talk about it from an urban planning perspective, but it had an urban planning bent to it of, you know, urban infill, fill in your urban core areas to have walkable communities, kind of plan for the future in a way that kind of take into consideration tastes and preferences to the extent possible, while also I was thinking like minimizing, for example, kind of urban sprawl, you know, large neighborhoods on the outside of the city to be developed, encroaching further into agricultural lands and things like that. taking into consideration the kind of community's energy needs, but not only that, but also culture and other things. So that's what I was thinking when I thought smart growth. Scott?
Well, my short pithy answer is whatever the organization Smart Growth America says. Now, Smart Growth America has been around for a long time and changed and transformed and expanded their vision. Years ago, they were essentially talking about the problems of conventional suburban development. Now, Smart Growth America is fairly difficult to distinguish in terms of their orientation from the Congress for New Urbanism. And so I might summarize where they're at and what people tend to mean by smart growth today as walkable, transit-served, mixed-use, pedestrian scale, pedestrian friendly, bicycle friendly, neighborhood scale development.
Thank you.
Any other comments?
One thing that really comes up for me is that we have, like, as individuals, what the meaning of that, of one word kind of on the page, may greatly differ between the kind of 7 of us, right? We all have different definitions of that. And recently I participated in a values brainstorming kind of session where we focused on a list of the top 10 for an organization and sat together for facilitated hour and a half on just listening to what one another had to say about each. So what comes up when we think about these terms, and then kind of pinging off each other on that and really listening to one another and really listening to kind of elicit, okay, what's really the essence? What's really the core of what we mean? I'm not proposing that we do that on this meeting here this evening, but I think it would be interesting if we could go back at some point to this list, maybe the top 15, have folks maybe, pull from those the ones that they feel really, really strongly about, or feel like, yeah, I want to say something about this one. I'm really drawn to this value, and here's why I'm really drawn to this value, and put some words around that. I think that can help us really embody, okay, when we say sustainability as a value, and that is something that could be incorporated into the comprehensive plan. We sort of have to think about, okay, what's that how? What is that action behind that? And what does that really mean to sort of us as a body that's working on this activity together? I'm hoping to do a little bit more of that work possibly in the next meeting. It wasn't something necessarily for tonight. But I'm certainly open to folks if they want to review or take just a look back at that list and hear if anybody wanted to say, like, this one's really important to me and here's why.
And if anyone wants an Excel version of that, I can email it.
You want to pop the list back up and share?
Can everyone see it now?
Yeah, maybe go to the top of the list.
I have a comment based on what Stacy was saying, what you were saying about here's something that's important to me and why. The rooted in science is really important to me because there are so many people who don't know the true impacts of things that are happening, right? They don't know they maybe don't even know about like the Solar Urbana-Champaign program or our municipal aggregation work. So they don't know some of the things that we've actually done. It's Scott's led, thanks Scott. But then there's a lot of people who, you know, they learned something because their kid came home from school and said it, or TikTok told them or something, right? And we as a, you know, as a representative of the community and through the government, through the city, we really should be making sure that we're using very sound inputs to our decisions. So that's what the rooted in science, why that's important to me. Could go on. I'll go on. So the other one I wanted to say is really important to me. And I'm not sure which one I chose because there were so many that were similar, but the community, okay, and the people. This is for me, it's all about the people. And I'm just not a pet person. I'm not really a bird watcher. I don't like getting my hands dirty in the garden, but I love that the sustainability is about our community and getting to know all of you, getting to know other people throughout the community, and then protecting people that we don't even know in other countries, right? There are things that we can make choices here that are impacting the world. And so I just, it all ties back to the people and our relationships and how we work together to support each other and protect each other.
Well, I'll just add that there may be, you know, another exercise in our not so distant future where we maybe throw a list of more practical goals or maybe sectors that should be addressed, and we may keep whittling down to more specifics and giving Andrea good feedback as the city works towards developing this comprehensive plan.
To that end, I have a question, which is, does the work of the SAC on this, in order for us to meet and talk together, do we have to have it on the schedule of the SAC meetings? Like, is it we're only going to talk about this 1 month from now, and then we're only going to talk about it another month from now? Or is it possible to host either open or potentially closed meetings for us to kind of hash through and dialogue on some of these items?
There's only closed meetings for things like personnel, so there wouldn't be any SAC closed meetings.
Okay.
There certainly can be SAC meetings of a different format, as long as they're publicly noticed and all the Open Meetings Act rules are followed. You know, there can be more of a workshop style meeting to just some basic Open Meetings Act items that need to be followed.
Could we?
We can't have discussion outside of a public meeting. So how's that different than the survey? The survey was compiled. Each individual member provided their own answers, but they weren't exchanging answers. They weren't seeing each other's answers appear in real time. They were all individual. So there was no discussion, digital or otherwise.
How much time is needed to be able to announce a meeting if we decided to do one every 2 weeks for a little while to dig into these concepts?
I think it's 48 hours.
If I could interject, part of the comprehensive plan process is that we are going to have community engagement for each of the different areas that we're addressing in the comprehensive plan. So sustainability, of course, will definitely be one of the front runners in that process. So one of the things we will want to do is identify stakeholders in the community that have a vested interest in this commission's efforts, and we'll want to engage them in that type of feedback. So we will be having some larger engagement sessions for the public at large, or more specifically even to the stakeholders that have interest in sustainability.
Great, thank you.
Morgan, it's great to see you, by the way.
I think of you every Halloween.
Oh my. And please, the rest of the group doesn't think that that's a scary thing. That's my birthday, so that's nothing beyond that.
Good to see you too. But I was wondering, I'm sorry, because I maybe I should know this from like the news or other announcements, but can you give us a sort of rundown of what the process is for the comprehensive plan? You just said sustainability would be, did I hear you correctly that sustainability is one of the key topics, or is it still
absolutely
decided?
Yeah, absolutely. Sustainability is one of the, I like your term, Scott, calling it foundational values. But we are going to have several areas that we specifically want to address that just based on recent developments, as well as what projects have been worked on by the city and that we're seeing a lot of public interest in. So we'll have these different groups that we will address. As far as where we're at in the comprehensive plan, really as of July 1, we are starting hot and heavy. So you guys are at the leading edge of the input for the comprehensive plan, which we really appreciate. So we're identifying stakeholders now. I've shared a list with Scott. I've got some more additions. So we'll be working with your group on making sure that we engage the stakeholders that have a vested interest in sustainability. We will also have a meeting schedule. We'll work with you on that. Like Scott said, having the advance notice. We're working on, I will say, one of the things that the pandemic has, helped in this regard is we were already looking at ways to engage the community that maybe doesn't have the resources as, equitable resources for engagement. And so the pandemic has forced everybody to find ways to communicate with everyone. And so we have different methods that we're going to use for outreach so that hopefully, nobody's left behind, that everybody has a voice in our comprehensive plan.
I'm sorry, I can't find a better copy of the image, but the city did send this out a few weeks or a month ago in a press release.
And city press releases they're all on the city's website as well, right? Under some media website or something?
Probably.
Okay.
Just a keyword search. This was the best copy I can find.
Great. Any other questions or thoughts on the comprehensive plan? Okay. Any final or concluding remarks on that from either Andrea or Scott?
No, I just look forward to working with the entire group and getting your feedback. It's going to be a very exciting time, and like I said, looking for it to be very inclusive and meaningful going forward.
Thank you so much. We look forward to working with you on it. Any questions from the public participants? Okay, we'll move back to our agenda then this evening.
Unfinished business and announcements.
Thank you, because it's not on my computer anymore. So I don't believe that there's any unfinished business. Is there anything under that line item? No. All right. So we don't have any further unfinished business this evening. There is one current announcement that is on the agenda, which is that the SAC does have an immediate opening for a commission member to join us on this commission. And to apply, please fill out the application form that you can find on the Urbana website and submit that to the mayor's office. And more information about the SAC can also be found at the Sustainability Advisory Commission website that is part or on the urbanaillinois.us website. Does anybody else have any other announcements that they would like to share this evening? Okay. All right, with no further business before the SAC tonight, I adjourn this meeting. Everybody stay safe and be well.